From lovebirds to jailbirds. Could these two Texas teens be their generation's Bonnie and Clyde? Well, possibly, if you skip the robberies, shoot out with police, and dwindle the many murders to just one. Yep, these two are behind bars for not just murder, but capital murder. The victim, this 17-year-old's grandmother. So much unfolded in just a matter of a week. So let's go back to last Wednesday, February 5th. That's when deputies were called to a home in Bacliff, Texas, which is less than an hour southeast of Houston. It was there deputies found the body of Tammy King. But deputies found a lot of red flags that pointed to signs of foul play, including two people who were missing from Tammy's home, Tammy's granddaughter Tara and Tara's boyfriend Uriah, who reportedly were last seen in the home with Tammy. So that left investigators with many unanswered questions, like how did Tammy die? And of course, where was Tara and Uriah? While waiting to hear the results of the autopsy, investigators did say Tammy sustained a gunshot wound, but her cause of death at the time was still unclear. As for 17-year-old Tara and her 18-year-old boyfriend, they were nowhere to be found, which prompted a manhunt for the two teens who at this point were named as persons of interest. So Thursday goes by, Friday goes by, Saturday goes by, no news as to where they were. The Galveston County Sheriff's Office even took to social media hoping to get a lead as to their location. Then on Sunday, a major update. Now, initially, investigators just wanted to speak with the teenage couple, but then the sheriff's office filed capital murder warrants against both of them. The two actually ended up arrested that same day, but a long way away from Bacliff. They were found in Laredo, Texas, which is right on the southern border. So were they trying to flee to Mexico? Well, that's unclear. And a lot was unclear at the time. That is until court documents painted a sinister picture of what may have happened. Well, now we're learning Tammy's boyfriend called the sheriff's office to report he was worried when he couldn't get in touch with her. So he forced himself into her home and found Tammy dead in her bedroom. She wasn't clothed, but the medical examiner identified a possible gunshot wound to the left side of her head. Officials believe Tammy died on February 5th, a day before her body was discovered. When Tammy's boyfriend spoke with deputies, he reportedly told them Tammy's house was ransacked, guns were missing from the safes, and a whole lot of money was missing too. He said thousands had been transferred out of her bank account. Tammy's boyfriend told investigators the last time he saw her was last Tuesday, so February 4th. And who else was there? Allegedly, Tammy's granddaughter Tara and her boyfriend Uriah. But here's the thing. According to Tammy's boyfriend, Tammy and Tara were in an argument that same morning because Tara didn't want to go to school. I mean, most teenagers feel that way at some point, right? But most teens aren't accused of killing their grandmother. But investigators found more when they checked into Tara's Cash App. It showed Tammy's bank account transferred $500 5 times to her Cash App. There was even failed attempts to transfer $5,000, even $20,000. So we have empty gun safes, lots of money transferred out of the victim's account. But why would the teens allegedly do this? Well, Uriah's mom might have an answer. His mom told deputies she was trying to call him and text him, but he told her to stop calling and not even search for him. Uriah's mom reportedly said she believed her son was capable of murder. His stepfather even seconded that because of his alleged violent tendencies. But Uriah's mom also told investigators what could be a key detail, that Tara hated her grandma. Why? Because she wouldn't allow her boyfriend to spend the night. So what all went down while the teens were trying to make a run for it? Well, after the couple were named as persons of interest, a man contacted the Galveston County Sheriff's Office saying Tara contacted him on Instagram asking for a ride to Wyoming, and she was willing to pay this man $300 to get there. That man wasn't able to give them a ride, so he asked another friend to do it. So when that man showed up, Tara and Uriah reportedly put 2 assault rifles in the trunk of his car and directed this man to an address in Pearland, which is a little more than half an hour away from Bacliff. So then they got into another car with another man once there. Another tipster called GCSO and said Tara messaged her on Instagram, telling her she ran away because her grandmother was abusive and used drugs. When this woman replied with a screenshot naming Tara and Uriah as persons of interest, Tara begged her not to say anything. The teen couple contacted a few more people, and they changed their look while on the run. They cut and dyed their hair. Oh, and as for the guns, maybe they weren't trying to use them for something bad, because another tipster told investigators they were trying to sell the guns, but no one bought them. Tara herself even had a change of conscience. Well, maybe. She allegedly admitted to one person she and her boyfriend killed her grandma because they were angry and high on meth. So that's a lot in the matter of a few days. Less than a week, because we know by Sunday the two were arrested in Laredo. And again, they are charged with capital murder. There's only 2 punishments if they are convicted or plead guilty. That's life in prison with no parole or the death penalty. So much information to unpack now, and let's unpack it with Texas-based criminal defense attorney Bridget Williams. Bridget, thank you so much for joining me today. First, I have to ask, what is your reaction to this case? defendants here are just so young, 17 years old, 18 years old. But what's your reaction now that we know all this information about what allegedly might have happened?
You're right. The defendants are so young, 17-year-old and an 18-year-old. I mean, it's extremely heartbreaking. You never know what is going on with anyone in their home life, and so it's just a heartbreaking matter, and it's just something that you wouldn't never expect to happen. But it's something that we just have to kind of continue to look into, see what's going on with. But it's a heartbreaking story.
And these two teens are facing a really severe punishment if they're convicted or if they plead guilty to these charges, and that's capital murder. But, these two teens, they're accused of capital murder, but these warrants out and they were issued on those charges before they were apprehended. How does something like that happen? And just talk to me a little bit about the severity of this charge, especially in the state of Texas.
Definitely. So a capital murder case is punishable by the death penalty or life in prison. And so it is one of the most, if not the most severe punishment in our state. Now, in order for someone to be charged with a capital murder, they have to fulfill one of the requirements that is required for capital murder. And that can be a host of things. In this particular situation, you may have a capital murder because you have a murder of an elderly person, depending upon the age. There could also be a murder if they were committing a murder in the course of another felony. And so we don't know all the information as relates to that, but that's another option that could have geared them towards a capital murder case. So pretty much capital murder is a murder that's charged with that has a punishment range of something that's much higher than just a murder case, but it has to fit within certain parameters, and there's a list of things that it can be.
And yeah, one thing that stood out to me, just kind of reading through the allegations and stuff like that, is just that these two teens were trying to get out of Dodge very quickly. They were trying to go to either Illinois or Wyoming, but they ended up in Laredo, which is about a 5, 6 hour drive away from Bacliff. Do you think that because of where Laredo is located, right on the southern border, do you think they were trying to cross the border? Do you think that was at all possible? And then they were just apprehended before that even happened? That part wasn't necessarily just clear yet.
Anything is possible, so we never know. Them being that close to the border, they very well could have had the opportunity to cross the border. I believe in some of the information that I was reading about, they were looking to try to move it from Laredo to another place, to another state. And a lot of times people do that because they want to go to another state. The warrant is normally good for the state of Texas. You can be arrested anywhere in the state of Texas. Once they move to another state, then the State Department here has to contact the other State Department to look for that person. So it's just another step that has to take place. But if you have a warrant that's in this state of Texas, you can be arrested wherever you may be found. And so I think that's another reason for them trying to leave and get out of Dodge as quickly as possible.
And given their charges, does it matter who pulled the trigger in this case? Whether it was Tara or it could have allegedly been her boyfriend. Does it matter who pulled the trigger in this case, even though both of them faced this capital murder charge right now?
That's a really good question. What I would say is that it can be where both of them have a charge for capital murder, or conspiracy to commit murder. That's another one. That's another charge there. However, if either person was involved in it, then both of them can still be charged for the capital murder. So if one person pulled the trigger, but the other person made out the plan, but was an accessory, right, or conspiracy involved with it, then both of them can be charged with the offense. So it really doesn't matter if both of them had something to do with it. Again, the planning or the pulling of the trigger or getting the gun, something that helped it in furtherance. That's the words we're looking for, in furtherance of the crime. And so if that's what happened here, then that's another reason why both of them would be charged.
And there's just, so much overwhelming evidence kind of really pointing to them being the culprits of this, right? But talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on just what police saw at the scene. You know, a ransacked home, guns were missing from the state safe, lots of money was taken also from the victim, transferred into her granddaughter's Cash App account, as well as they were trying to allegedly sell off these guns, possibly to make more money to get further. How hard, given that all that information that we have right now, how hard as a criminal defense attorney can it be to defend a client? You know, both of them are so young. This seems like kind of just a very reckless, not well planned out crime. How hard could that be to defend these two?
One thing that you just said interesting was that's reckless. And then so all of the things that they were doing here, like you just stated, they took the money from her accounts, and it showed up in the boyfriend's account. Ransacked the homes, were found with the guns that were from the lady's home. And then also having multiple witnesses state that they informed the witnesses that they in fact did kill the grandmother. So now you have multiple witnesses. There's things on top of evidence. It's evidence on top of evidence for a case like this. And so that gears more towards intentional, not necessarily recklessness. And recklessness then would be like at manslaughter. But those actions move towards the direction of this was intentionally done. We intentionally killed this woman. We intentionally stole from her. We intentionally tried to take her money and run off and go somewhere else. And so, as a criminal defense attorney, generally it is our job to look through all of that evidence, and there's going to be different crimes there. So you have the capital murder, then you have theft, and then so there may be multiple offenses in this particular case. And so you have to take it one case at a time. And so, as a criminal defense attorney, sometimes after you've gone through all of that evidence, it is our job to make sure that that person doesn't get the death penalty or doesn't spend their life in prison, or maybe they need to go seek some type of mental help, some type of just program that could be helpful for them. We just never know. But it can be our job at some points to make sure that they don't get the death penalty, and not necessarily for them to walk home or just go home scot-free. And I believe that that's a conversation that every criminal defense attorney has with their client, is that this is what we're actually seeking here based off of the evidence that is presented in front of you here and what is done here. We're trying to make sure that you don't get the death penalty.
Because facing that at 17 or 18 years old is just a very scary thought in and of itself. Do you see a case like this going to trial, or do you see, possibly other options, a plea deal, or maybe possibly pleading not guilty by reason of insanity given their age at the time this allegedly happened, or this happened, excuse me.
The thing is that the person who is 17, the female that's 17, she's technically a juvenile, right? And so if she's tried in juvenile court, the juvenile court has the authority to waive their just jurisdiction over it and move that case to an adult court. So an adult court for felony cases would be a district court here in Texas. So they have the authority to waive that and move it to a district court, where she can be tried as an adult. Now, if that happens, then again, like I stated before, she can be facing the death penalty at that time, just as the 18-year-old would be, or life in prison. And so normally it depends on what the offers are. What is the evidence that's presented in the discovery that the DA's office presents? What is the information that the criminal defense attorney is able to get from their witnesses, their investigators, and everyone that is working on their team? And then that discussion with the prosecutor. That's on in every criminal case. It's going to be discussions with the prosecutors prior to that. And if there is nothing else that's on the table, I would say the only option that's on the table is the death penalty, then it would probably go to trial, because that's the worst thing that could happen anyway. So if I were the criminal defense attorney, I would put it on the trial docket, and we would be moving forward with the hopes of this individual not getting the death penalty. Even if you lose in the guilt innocence phase and the guilty part after that, the goal is to make sure that person doesn't get the death penalty.
And as a criminal defense attorney, is it particularly challenging when you have a defendant or a client who is accused of, fatally harming a relative, in this case, her own grandmother?
It can be extremely difficult. In any type of violent offense, it can be extremely difficult, especially if that client is a juvenile. Again, they're a child. And so that is a difficult position to be in. It's our job as attorneys to represent them, be an advocate for them, but also be a counselor. So we can be an advocate and a counselor at law for that person. And what that means sometimes is being truth tellers to the client, letting them know, hey, this is what you have done, and this is what the repercussions of that is. And it's our job, again, to minimize the punishment as much as possible. However, being forthright and letting them know, again, these are the repercussions of what you have done, and how can we best serve them, make sure they get justice in every way possible, make sure the state does their job. But because of what you have done in this situation, based on all the evidence, what we have here, I'm going to always tell you the truth.
Well, Bridget Williams, I appreciate so much your insight into this case. Thank you so much. My final question to you, though, is what do you make of this possible motive here that Tara King was just upset with her grandmother, angry with her grandmother because her grandmother wouldn't allow her boyfriend to stay at the house?
It's unconscionable. It is something that is just, I mean, unfathomable that that would be the reason why. But again, we just never know what is happening at someone's home, and what the situation is that's going on in the home. Nothing rises to the level of killing someone ever. And so we just never know what mental imbalances are going on, what mental treatments are going on at home, and not at this phase. But during the discovery phase, criminal defense attorneys will find out that information, and that will be something that would be presented in a trial setting. And so it's definitely a very sad story, not something I wish on anyone.
Definitely a heartbreaking story overall, but it'll be interesting to see once that discovery happens. We could learn more with text messages, more possible payments, all that stuff, and see what else happens from there. Bridget, again, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Both Uriah Ureck and Tara King are being held in the Galveston County Jail on no bond. According to online records, both teens have depositions set for April. And at this time, no plea has been entered, but both teens were given different court-appointed attorneys. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.